Now that we've added all the elements to the chart that we would like to have on it, let's now get it into the shape that we want it to be. So let's go about formatting some of this information. Now, one of the things you notice is that the ribbon at the very top we see here takes up a good bit of space and makes the chart obviously look smaller on the screen. So what I can do is then move your cursor up to the this little up arrow, or almost like a caret we see, and go ahead left mouse button, and that will collapse that ribbon. So now we see more of the region here of the window is taken up by the chart itself. One of the first things I want to do is modify the shape and the size of the text. Change the font, even change the color of the font. We can do this. You notice here that I believe it's Calibri, or I'll double click on top of the bar chart title. We notice that here come a list of options. I'm just going to move the cursor over top of that title and right mouse click. And here I think it's easiest to change the font that you see here for any given text on the bar chart. So again, let's go ahead and close up that extra window that opened up that had various options. I'm just going to move the cursor, clicked once with the left mouse button when I got the cursor over top of the chart title, click right mouse button with the cursor over top of the title, and come down to font. Now I'll just left mouse button once, and now here comes a range of options for actually modifying it. One of the things that we'll do here is we'll change, first of all, the font itself. I'll eventually pull this into a memo that is already written in Times New Roman, so let's also make the chart be consistent with that font that I see that I use in the memo. So I'll click and highlight to open up all the options. I'll scroll down to Times New Roman. And there it appears. I'll highlight that. Now also you'll notice then the font size is 14. I'm going to make it a little bit larger, and that's something you may want to play with depending upon what size the chart ends up whenever you put it into another document. For larger sizes of the chart, you don't need quite you may want to just modify it and see what happens and see what looks best. So now it's going to be a font size of 18. The next thing I'm going to do under font color, it looks like it's black, but actually it's a gray. So I'll click on the down button next to the actual font color, and it's, if I'm not mistaken, it is this shade of gray. I'm going to move up and just choose a regular black. It's more apparent than when you print it up and so on. And I'll just click OK. And there we see the bar chart title hasn't changed accordingly. Let's do the same thing here for the labels for each axis. So I'll just click and highlight. Go ahead and close that. And one of the things I like to do oftentimes is just click and drag within the button, within the box rather, to highlight it all. And you notice automatically what comes up, Calibri is the default that's used here. I'm going to change that to Times New Roman, the font size. So I'll scroll down towards the bottom where there is Times New Roman. Right there it is. I'll click it. I don't want it to be as large as what we see it was for the title. Let's go ahead and change that to be a font size of 12. And as far as the font color, I'll come over here under color, and I'm just going to choose black. So that'll be a solid black. We'll be able to see it more, and then hit enter, and we see that's exactly the change that we wanted. I'll do the same thing down here. Whenever I double click it, it opens up the other option. I should just be single clicking it. But now let's click and drag. Whoops, go ahead and click and drag within. Get the cursor. There's the cursor. Highlight it, change it to Times New Roman like I've done already. Move it to a 12 font and go ahead and make it black. I'll do the same thing for the other information I have here. I'll click on this text box, highlight and click and drag to highlight that, change it to Times New Roman, and I'll keep it as size 11 in the black font. But now, also what I want to do, I'll go back in and just highlight source, that word source. And one of the things that I like to do is just make the source italicized. Okay. Let's also click on this text box that has the information for sample size. Change that to Times New Roman. 11 is fine. Let's click on the black for the ink, and I also will come back in and I also like to italicize the N, and right there, now we've modified that. Let's go ahead and modify the information that is reported in terms of each of these axes. So click on one of the, you notice what I did there? All I did was clicked on one of the labels there, and the entire axis comes open. It's highlighted. Right mouse button, I should say. Come up and choose font. Let's come down and select Times New Roman. There it is. And let's make it a font size of 11, not 10. 10's a little small for right now. Click on font color black. Yeah, that's what we want. Click OK. Let's do the same thing for the numbers here. Oops, I double click. Let's just go ahead and just click once to highlight. Now, right mouse button to open up the options. Click on font. Times New Roman is selected. We have 11. We have black. And that is what we want. Click OK. And there we see, now we've modified that information. Okay? The next thing that I like to do is I like to put a border around the actual area of where the data is actually being plotted. So here I'll move the cursor somewhere inside of the plot area. Click once with the left mouse button. You notice then it's highlighted the inside, just that area itself, the plot area it's referred to as. And with that being highlighted, I'm going to click the right mouse button once, and I'm going to come down to Format Plot Area. Click on that once, and now it comes the different options we have. We can either fill in a color, which of course we wouldn't want to do, but I'll show you what it looks like. There's a fill color. We can change what that color is if we so desire, but that's not something that I really think is very pretty to do. So I'll just click on no fill. That's not what I want to do, but I do want to put a border around it. And right now there is no border around it. I'll click on solid line, and right now if I just click OK, it's going to make it a blue border. I can change any color to any color border that I want. I'm going to make it just a black border, and I'll choose the transparency of 0, width of 0.75, and right now it's just a simple solid line, but I could always modify it by clicking on one of these options right here. But that's all I want to do for right now, so I'll go ahead and now close that option, and we see that a border appears around most of the chart. Where it doesn't appear, however, is going to be at the x-axis where the actual categories are reported. To have a border, though, completed, and I like to have this border on the bottom here, below each one of these bars, I'll move the cursor to in the area where the category labels are reported for that x-axis. Left mouse button click once to highlight those, and now I'll do a right mouse button click to come up the options, and again I'll come to Format Chart Area, and again come under the chart options. I'll come down to border, which is what already is selected here. I'll make it a solid line, and now the last option I chose is black, so it automatically goes to black. And I'll go ahead and close that, and we should see then, oops, let me do it again. Again, highlight with the, oops, I did it on the entire chart itself. Let's instead just do it for the actual bottom. So right mouse button to highlight, left mouse button. I'm sorry, left mouse button to highlight, right to choose an option, format axes, and I'll just come down and choose axis. We're on axis option right here, and we're going to do here, just click on right here, the solid line, and now it's black. There. That's what I want. And you notice the black line appears here. Okay, so I will now close that. And there we have the black line around the entire plot area. I'm going to make a couple other changes to this chart. First of all, I'll come back over and click with left mouse button to highlight the axis labels over here, and I'll again use a right mouse button, and we'll come down to format axis. And one of the things that we'll notice here, we have a range of different options that we have. I'll come down and highlight with the axis options highlighted, come under number, click on that, and I'll scroll down, and you notice here I can change the look of the numbers that's reported. Right now it has a decimal place. We see here decimal place is 1. Let's go ahead and click that, highlight it, 0, and just go ahead and close this option. And now you notice we no longer have decimals, which I didn't need in this particular case. I also want to get rid of these grid lines here. So I'll click on one of the grid lines, and notice they all now become highlighted, and just go up to a delete key or a backspace key to delete those. And the next thing I want to do is to change the width of these bars. The bars are rather narrow here, and I like to make them take up more of the space and have less of a gap between them. So I'll left mouse button on any one of the bars, and now you notice they are highlighted. And now with the cursor still over one of the bars, right mouse button, and we'll come down to Format Data Series. Now when we see the Format Data Series, what pops up here is series overlap, gap width. The gap width actually refers to what is the width of the gap between the bars. And right now it indicates that the gap itself is 219% of the width of any one of those bars. Let's go ahead and make that smaller. I can make it larger by clicking and dragging this over to the right. Makes it smaller. Now each gap is 360%, or I can even highlight and just type in a number, 300%. Now the gap between bars is the width of 3 of those bars. Let's go ahead though and make the gap smaller. Let's make it about, I'll type in maybe about 75%. And that looks pretty nice. Now the gap is much narrower, about 75% of the width of one of the bars. And that looks like it's much prettier as far as I'm concerned. I don't like really thin bars. I just think aesthetically it's not as pleasing. The last thing I want to change here is going to be the actual colors of the bars. Now I just clicked anywhere outside the chart area to unhighlight the chart. Move your cursor over top of one of the bars and left mouse button to highlight them all, and now use a right mouse button, come up with a range of options, and you notice I can come up here to fill, and this will give me a range with just a left mouse button, all the different colors here that are in this current theme, or any other standard colors, or if I want more colors, of course I can come down here and click on fill more colors. Let's say I wanted to change this to a slightly different color, or maybe I want to change it to a darker shade of blue perhaps. Let's go back to the other color I had a moment ago. Let's say something such as this shade of orange. Now also there's a certain thin border around each one of these bars. Let me click on one of the bars, right mouse button, and let's go ahead and modify the outline so it's in the same hue but is a darker hue. And there's actually, you can see a thin dark line around each one of those. So I can change the colors of the bars. If I wish to, I can give each bar a different color. Notice I click on one of them, they all become highlighted. Click on one of them a second time, and now you notice that's the only one that stays highlighted. I can go back and I can change the fill color. Let's keep it all in sort of the same tone. Now, use that. Now let's click once, highlights all of them. Click a second time, now that one's only highlighted. I'll come down and I will come across, let's say, to a purple. And let's choose the darker purple for the outline. Let's do the same thing over here. Click once, they all get highlighted. Click a second time, then right mouse button, and now I can come up and choose a different fill color. Now let's do one last one here. Right mouse button, what fill should I choose? The purple's kind of a blue, so I'll come over to the green and choose a dark green. Now, I wouldn't recommend using all these different colors. I would only use these colors if this really mattered. But I just wanted to show you how you can modify then the color as well as the borders of each one of these. But if you're going to print something up and bring it into another document, I would recommend that you use some sort of shade of gray for your bars. If you're reporting this information into a visual presentation, let's say a PowerPoint display, then use colored bars, but I would keep them all the same color unless the color has a specific meaning for each one of these. Like if we were reporting, or say percent of vote that candidates had received in a given election, maybe I'd highlight the percent vote received by the Republican candidate, make that red, and then percent Democrat bar, make that blue. Other than that, if the colors not meaningfully convey information related to those labels, I would avoid using different colors. So let me now just click on one of the bars, and now all are highlighted. Right mouse button. I'm going to come over for the fill. I'm going to choose a shade of gray. See how that looks. That looks pretty nice. And now let's go ahead and click again to highlight them all. Right mouse button. And the outline, I'll just make it a black outline. And there, that's going to be a nice shade of gray, so it's a little bit of color to it, but also it's not all black, so I'm not using an awful lot of ink when I print this up.